Last week, Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, said something on the All In podcast that literally stopped me mid-scroll. He said if a $500,000 engineer at NVIDIA isn't burning through $250,000 in tokens each year, he would be extremely worried. And Zapier and Meta are now tracking every token each employee uses. And this new model is starting to appear everywhere. So I'm going to walk you through what these CEOs are actually saying, the new work model that's being created because of this, and why your AI usage might just be the new performance review. And by the way, I'm Marlon. I help businesses implement AI into their systems, and this AI stuff is all I do all day long. And there's some very shocking research that caught me off guard. But first, let's just understand some basic terminology. So companies that now regularly use AI are starting to track their workers' use of tokens. Now, this word token gets thrown around a lot. Tokens are the foundational unit through which AI models process all information. Essentially, you can just look at as the form of currency. So we spend money to buy things. Essentially, you're going to spend tokens to use these models. And just like how there's various price ranges for different products that you can buy, essentially you can spend more or less tokens depending on what you're trying to accomplish, and we'll touch upon that later. More specifically though, tokens are tiny units of data that result from breaking larger chunks of information into smaller pieces. And just to go a little deeper, for large language models, short words may be represented by a single token, while longer words may be split into two or more tokens. The word darkness, for instance, would be split into two tokens, dark and ness, with each token bearing a numerical representation. Every prompt and response consumes tokens and incurs charges. And that's why you can go to your usage panel in any LLM and you can see the consumption depending on actually what you're doing. So there's a interesting trend starting to take place. While the unit price of AI tokens is falling, and it is falling drastically year over year, overall enterprise spending on and scaling of AI systems is rising. The number of users, complexity of models, and intensity of workloads will likely drive greater token consumption and consequently higher costs. So you're seeing this inverse relationship. Yes, the token prices are falling. They're going to get extremely cheap. However, more companies now are going to start relying more on AI agents and just embedding the entire company with AI. So you're going to see a higher cost. So OpenAI has data on average reasoning token consumption per organization, and they say it has increased by approximately 320 times in the past 12 months. Now, there are some questions arising with this new model, such as tokens measure volume, not outcome. So for instance, if me and you are both working a 9 to 5, I punch in from 9 to 5, you punch in to 9 to 5. Essentially, that is only measuring the quantity aspect, not the quality aspect. So now there are some methods being brought to the table. But just to be more clear, a poorly structured prompt that forces the model to iterate, rephrase, or regenerate a response will consume more tokens than a concise, well-targeted query. So it's kind of hard to get a pulse on token use. However, recently on the Moonshots podcast with Peter Diamandis, they basically said you can take a lot of the prompts or the engineer's prompts or the worker's prompts and just give it to AI really and say, hey, was this a fair use of token consumption? And then the AI is essentially just going to review your output and then say this was great or not. And if it's not great, well, you're not going to be in a good spot. So this goes on to say that dynamic draws comparisons to earlier enterprise metrics, right? So click-through rates once served as a proxy for advertising effectiveness, hours logged once function as a proxy for productivity. Both created incentives that diverged from the outcomes they were meant to track, right? Again, because hours logged, it doesn't mean you're productive. Elon Musk can work 2 hours, and that's probably more productive than me or you working like a full day's work. Hours logged is not a great metric for productivity. But interestingly enough, again, Jensen, he said if that $500,000 engineer did not consume at least 250,000 worth of tokens, I'm going to be deeply alarmed. So now you're going to start seeing benchmarks. Like, look, you're in this role, you need to at least hit this consumption of tokens. And that's going to be, again, another criteria, another benchmark you need to adhere to in that specific role. He says he's trying to get to $2 billion of tokens for the engineering team. It's just like me and you showing up to work saying, I'm not going to use a computer today. I'm going to use paper and pencil. Like, that's just not going to go over too well. So then Jensen goes on to say employees would one day work alongside hundreds of thousands of AI agents. I have 42,000 biological employees, and I'm going to have hundreds of thousands of digital employees. But you have to remember, when 42,000 people are using AI for very complex tasks, obviously that price point is going to increase. On top of that, you're going to have hundreds of thousands of agents. And so CEOs are going to be tasked with essentially providing the team with a like AI expense, an AI allocation expense that they have to pull for somewhere else, right? And then we have TechCrunch, and essentially the idea is straightforward enough. Rather than giving engineers only salary, equity, and bonuses, companies would also hand them a budget of AI tokens, the computational units that power tools like Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini. And you have to realize too, a lot of these frontier labs or just a lot of these startups, they want top tier talent. And the top tier talent only wants to work for a mom and pop shop. They're gonna want to work for the NVIDIAs, for the freaking Googles, for the Elon Musks, whoever, right? And so you have to start incentivizing a little differently. And so if AI starts taking over, you're going to want to provide them with the proper tools, and that's going to be in the form of AI tokens. And so the AI token allocation per role is going to be baked in. You're going to be looking through the job description, and it's going to say allocation X, Y, and Z. So OpenClaw was a tremendous breakthrough in how we utilize these technologies, but you have to remember, if it starts doing everything for you, again, you're spending a lot of money for this to take place. Just like you would with an employee, you are spending essentially money, aka tokens, for these tasks to be completed. For instance, where someone writing an essay might use 10,000 tokens in an afternoon, an engineer running a swarm of agents can blow through millions in a day. So when companies actually start allocating their dollars, obviously, just like with employees, they're going to want to measure productivity. So Meta and OpenAI are now competing on internal leaderboards that track token consumption, which is very interesting. So now they're using human psychology to make it a game. And so you're going to get tremendous more amount of productivity because now it's a game and we're going to track it on a leaderboard. And also they can see who is actually performing well and actually who is using AI. And I'm telling you, this is going to be the norm, right? The tech industry is always forward looking, very much so, more than, all the other industries. So once the tech industry starts implementing things like this and people start realizing it's actually working, a lot of other industries and companies are going to start implementing this system. So according to TechCrunch, a lot of firms now are positioning AI API credits as the fourth pillar of engineering compensation. And so OpenAI's usage can run anywhere from a few hundred to several $1,000s per engineer per year. And so for a company with 100 engineers, that's real money, potentially 6 figures annually, just to keep the development pipeline moving at modern speed. And this is only 100 engineers. A lot of these other companies, like NVIDIA, right, employ 40,000 engineers. And so that's a tremendous amount of cost. However, by converting those costs into individual token allocations, it accomplishes two things. They make the compensation package look more competitive, and they put a cap on their AI spending exposure. The engineer's perspective depends entirely on how you frame it. In one view, tokens represent recognition that AI tools have become as essential as a laptop or an IDE. In another view, it's a cost transfer. Companies that previously absorbed AI expenses as standard operational overhead are now itemizing them, making employees responsible for managing their own consumption. So what happens when an engineer burns through their token allocation mid-quarter? Do they pay out the pocket, request more, or look inefficient? And there's another term kind of going around. It's called the permanent underclass. Basically just saying when AI can do anything we can do, cheaper, better, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times faster, the ones at the bottom are going to stay there because it's very hard to compete against AI, right? So that notion kind of takes place here. Engineers at well-founded startups might get lavish token packages. Those at bootstrapped companies or non-tech firms might get nothing, forced to rely on free tiers or personal subscriptions. This disparity could become another form of talent stratification, where the best AI-assisted engineers cluster at companies that can afford to feed their tool habits. And so then we have a report by Deloitte, which is just reinforcing what we're saying, but AI is now the fastest growing expense in corporate technology budgets. So yet, as costs mount, returns can remain elusive. Nearly half of leaders expect it will take up to 3 years to see ROI from basic AI automation. And so it becomes less about immediate returns and more about staving off existential threats or maintaining competitive parity. So again, you have to pay to play. So they're willing to bite the bullet because one, if they don't implement all of this, well, they're going to go to the bottom. And number two, they want to remain competitive within this new ecosystem. And so ultimately, the focus must shift from whether AI delivers value to how its economics are measured and managed for organizations to thrive in a structurally different environment. And so then we can even see the tides turning with someone like Shopify. And so employees will be expected to prove why they cannot get what they want done using AI. And this was a memo sent out on X. The CEO says there's a fundamental expectation across Shopify that employees embrace AI in their daily work, saying it has been a multiplier of productivity for those who have used it. And so again, the CEO is going to have to think, if we're allocating this amount of money to, AI consumption, does it make sense? Right? For a lot of companies, it won't make sense because it's just going to be too expensive. Maybe the top A players get it. So the CEO is going to have to start juggling these economics because it can make or break a company. And so then Shopify says they will factor AI usage into performance reviews, which is insane. Again, this is going to be another criteria that you have to meet to be able to work at certain companies. Tech companies are looking to streamline costs in other areas, either by discontinuing money-losing projects or through layoffs. And when it comes to AI agents and an employee, we already know that most employees don't do really much work. And so in the world of AI, it is becoming increasingly more compelling to take those expenses and then just allocate that to AI consumption. But it's also important to note from the All In podcast, they say, what happens when AI tokens cost more than your employees? And again, that is the game the CEO is now going to have to start playing and start looking strategically to the economics of it all. Jason says, we with our agents hit $300 a day per agent using the Claude API, like instantly. And that was doing maybe 10 or 20%. And that's $100K per year agent. Chamath says we're getting to a place where we have to basically now say, what is the token budget we're willing to give our best devs? And so he goes on to say, well, hold on a second. And now they need to be at least 2x as productive as another employee. And he says, this is actively happening inside my business because otherwise I'll run out of money. So it's a juggling game between one, how much are you willing to allocate in AI token consumption? And two, if we are allocating all this money, are we seeing more productivity than we would otherwise see with just having normal employees around? Because you will do the math and you will eventually see, yes, I do need a 2x production, or this math just doesn't math, right? And that's what they're seeing right now. These lines here essentially go back to the argument between our CEOs and companies going to hire blood or are they going to hire metal, right? And they're going to have to work out those economics and make sure that the maths. So the landscape is once again changing. And so if you want to stay up to date on the latest and greatest of all things AI, subscribe. Best case, you learn AI and you beat your competitors. Worst case, you unsubscribe for the next 2, 5, 3 weeks. Totally fine with that. But as always, my friends, stay human and I'll see you next time.